Okay, welcome everybody to another class of Mishna Monday, special Memorial Day, Mishna Monday, as we remember all our veterans and the heroes of our country. Certainly a wonderful way to honor their memory and help their souls out is to study in their honor, in their memory, study Torah. Certainly a great helper up there in heaven. So we're going to continue along. We're in the middle of a Mishnah here in so certainly it's we're in the middle of a Mishnah here in Brachos in the second parak. About to do a story about Rabbi Gamliel, and we are going to see there's actually going to be three. This the end of this Mishnah, we're in the middle of it, the next two are all stories about Rabbi Gamliel, where he basically actions that he did that seem to be against the halacha, against what should have been done, and he explains why he did it in each instance. So we'll see those cases. We'll start with the first one, which is in the middle of the Mishnah we're in the middle of. I'm going to pull it up on my screen now. Just give me one moment here. Okay, I'm just getting it up here. Apologize that we're running a tiny bit late today. Okay, here we are. Let me pull it up. So we're in the middle of the fifth Mishnah and the second parak here. Hold on one more second. It's coming. I'm sorry. There you go. There. Okay. Here we are. This is the second Mishnah in Brach, fifth Mishnah, the second chapter in Brachos. So there's a story right in the middle here. There was an incident with Rabbi Gamliel. I'm going to read it from the Hebrew. It says, Ma'asav Rabbi Gamliel, there was an incident with Rabbi Gamliel, Shekarav Halayla Harishon Shenasa, that he read the Shema on the first night he got married. We had mentioned in this Mishnah that a groom, a person who just got married, is not obligated in the Shema the first night he gets married, and that's because he's busy with another mitzvah that night, the mitzvah of consummating the marriage and having children, whatever exactly the mitzvah is, involved with consummating the marriage. And since he's involved with that mitzvah, and that takes away his mental energy, his mental focus, and he can't properly focus on the Shema, so he's absolved from the requirement to say the Shema. Nonetheless, the Mishnah makes down that Rabbi Gamliel, when he got married, he did say the Shema. Amar lo Talmidav, his students said to him, Lo lima d'tanu Rabbeinu, did you not teach us, our rabbi, Rabbi Gamliel, shechasan pater mikriya Shema b'layla harishon, that a chasan, a groom, is not obligated in Shema the first night he gets married, because he won't be able to focus properly. So why did you go and say it? What's going on? Apparently he said it in public. They knew he said it. He said to them, Eini shoymei alachem, I will not listen to you, levatul mimeni, to take away from myself, to preclude myself, malchus shemayim afilu shachas, from accepting the yoke of heaven for even one moment. I'm not going to listen to you. I will do it. I'm not going to miss my chance just because I got married to accept the yoke of heaven on myself. Basic understanding of his response would be that he was telling them that that I feel I can focus, even though I just got married. I'm, of a higher ilk or whatever. Now I feel that I can focus, even though there's other things going on, and therefore I don't. I'm not absolved. I should say it. Most people shouldn't because they won't be focused. But I, who am able to focus, he wasn't saying in a bragging way. He was explaining why he did what he did. I am able to focus. Should say the Shema on the first night I got married. So that was the back and forth there. We had mentioned last week. We also say Shema when we get married, not because we're like a Gamliel that we're able to focus so much even when we get married, but rather we say it nowadays that we don't focus so much anyways, even when we're not getting married. So we're not going to not say it just because we happen to get married. So in terms of practical halacha nowadays, we say the Shema even every night. We don't take off the night we got married. But back then, when they did, because they were able to have more focus, just not when they got married. When Gamliel was on a higher level, he was able to focus even when he got married. I saw the Kahati Mishnayos. The Kahati Mishnayos, that's an edition of Mishnah with a commentary from Rabbi Kahati. I think his first name is Pinchas, I'm not sure. It was written in the 20th century in Israel. He was actually a postal worker. He worked for the post office there. I don't know if he was on delivery routes or he just worked in the office. But and on his spare time, like when there was no one in the office, when he had spare time, he would go and work on his commentary. And that way he was able to serve his country, delivering the mail and taking care of the mail system and serve his people. He wrote, his commentary on the Mishnah, the Kahati commentary, which is basically it's a commentary for like regular people, like for like you don't need to have knowledge and thing. It's in Hebrew, though now I think there's an English translation that's available, but it's like sort of takes the person who doesn't have any background knowledge of Mishnah and just like makes it very simple, straight out for you. He lays it out nicely. It's like a Hebrew art scroll on Mishnah. I mean, there is art scroll on Mishnah also, but this is before art scroll Mishnah came out. So in his commentary, Rabbi Kahati's commentary, he brings down an explanation in the name of Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, who was a great rabbi in Brisk in the beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century. I'm not sure if he was in the 19th century, maybe just the beginning of the 20th century. He gives an explanation of this line. It actually reads in very nicely. If you remember the words of Rabbi Gamliel, let's pull it back up on the screen, were, I am not listening to you to refrain from saying Shema, and in doing so, preclude myself from the extended yoke of heaven for even one moment. What's this line? Yeshua said, I'm not going to take off tonight. I'm going to do it. So what's this? Look, I'm not going to take myself away from the yoke of heaven even for one moment. Like, what exactly does it mean? I think the simple understanding, it just means one moment, like one day, even one day. But why is he saying that phrase? Like, even for one moment, I don't want to miss it. Like, as if it's like a constant thing. I don't want to miss one moment. Like, what exactly does that mean? So, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik explained that for most people, what is their day about? They're thinking about whatever they're busy with, their work, their family, their friends, their interests, sports, whatever. That's what you spend your day thinking about. And then when you're saying the Shema, you stop. You say, I'm not going to focus on other things. I'm going to try at least to focus my mind now on the Shema that I'm saying. So we're disengaging ourselves from whatever is going on in general and spending a few moments to focus on the Shema. Hopefully, we're trying to focus on it. Rabbi Gamliel was the other way. Rabbi Gamliel, his whole day was focused on serving God and whatever God would want from him. That was his focus. That's what his mind was always on. So he always had in mind accepting God, thinking about God, thinking about God's will, God's love. That's what he thought about all day. a great person like Rabban Gamliel. When he went to the bathroom and we can't think of words of Torah, we can't think of it, it was probably a struggle for him. He had to divert his mind away. For us, we just have to not actively focus at that point. But he had to divert his mind away with those. So what he was saying is that my mind is constantly involved in accepting, thinking about God. So I have no reason now to just take myself away from that, like just because I happen to get married. So I'm not gonna. That's what he's saying. I'm not gonna take my thoughts away even for one moment. Meaning, there's no reason now why I have to pull myself away to not say the Shema. It's the other way. You're not obligated to go and on that night when you're busy thinking about a mitzvah, that occur when you get married, consummating the marriage, whatever is involved with that, whatever the mitzvah involved with that is, having kids or increasing the relationship with your wife. So while you're focusing on that, we say you don't have to pull yourself away to focus on the Shema. So that's why we're not obligated the night we got married. But he was saying, for me, it's opposite. Well, I should go pull myself away from focusing on God to go and not say Shema. Like the whole reason why we usually don't say it when we get married, he's saying doesn't apply to me. For me, it's the other way. I would have to, make a conscious effort to not say Shema. So there's no reason for me to do that. He was saying there's no reason I should pull myself away from God for even one moment. So that's for great people like Rabban Gamliel. That's why Rabban Gamliel said the Shema. If an ordinary person would say the Shema, nowadays everyone says the Shema, we said before, because people don't focus anyway. But for an ordinary person to say the Shema on the night he gets married would be inappropriate, because Rabban Gamliel could give this message of I'm always focused on God. I'm a great person. It was true. And he wasn't being haughty when he said it. It was the truth. He should say Shema. But for a regular person to go and do it would sort of be like, I'm this person when I'm not. So that's why Rabban Gamliel said the Shema, even though the Mishnah, for most people, says not to. Now we're going to continue on with story number 2 of Rabban Gamliel. There's 3 stories. The first one we just did. Story number 2. I'm going to pull it up on my screen again. I'm going to pull up the next Mishnah. That's the second story. Okay, here we are. So we just finished Mishnah 5. Now we're moving on to Mishnah 6. Chapter 2, Mishnah 6. Here. It all fits on one screen. Look at that. The Hebrew and English. Okay, so we're at the top of the screen here. It says, Rachatz Laila Rishon Shemesa Ishto. He bathed on the first night after his wife died. Right? Right, we're talking about here, we have a concept of Shiva, right? That we mourn when our relatives die. And there's a concept of Shiva for 7 days. We have an extra level of mourning. And one of the laws, I don't know all the detailed laws. Thankfully, it has not yet been something that I've had to practice. But one of the laws that we don't wash our entire body, I think, in hot water. We don't take like a regular shower like we would, as like a symbol or to help ourselves feel the pain of the loss. We're curtailing some of our normal pleasures. And again, I just want to reiterate, I don't know, I'm not talking from practical Jewish law here, because I don't know what, the details. Certainly someone who it's pertinent for can find out. But so whatever I say here is not meant to be taken as actual law, Jewish law, what you're supposed to do. But there's an idea of not bathing. But nonetheless, Rabban Gamliel did bathe right after his wife died. He didn't wait. He didn't refrain from it. Amar lo talmido. So again, his student said to him, Lo limadatanu Rabbeinu she'avel asa b'richutz. Did you not teach us, our rabbi, that a mourner, right? An avel is a mourner, is forbidden to wash. So why'd you wash yourself? I think to wash your body with warm water. Why'd you do it? Gamliel said to them, Eini kishar kol adam. I'm not like regular people. Istinus only. I am an istinus. I see here they translate as delicate. There's two basic explanations of this word that I saw. The more common one seemed actually not to be like the translation here, but istinus means like cold. Like I'm always cold, so I need that warm bath to warm myself up. So according to that, he was saying that the idea of not taking a warm bath is not you're not taking pleasures. You're curtailing yourself from pleasures. But this is not like a pleasure for me. This is I need this warm bath to warm myself up. It's like a something I need to do. Otherwise, I get too cold. So that's one explanation of the Mishnah why you took a bath. The other explanation would be more like this: delicate or finicky. People might use like they get bothered. I'm very easily bothered or get very uncomfortable from not being clean, more so than the average person. So therefore, even though most people they can't take baths, but for me, like it's already interferes with my ability to have like daily to function too much because I'm so delicate. I'm so bothers me so much. Therefore, he felt he was eligible for an exception to take a bath. As they say here, right? For me, not causing bathing causes actual physical distress, and even a mourner need not suffer physical distress as part of his mourning, right? So that's that line that I was just mentioning in the other version, but it's true in both. The answer is the same logic in both things. That the idea of not bathing is not to pleasure yourself, but you don't have to go and distress yourself. We don't say cause yourself pain during mourning. You just abstain from some pleasures. And as an istinus, as a finicky or a delicate person, he would be crossing the line into going too far into actually painting himself during mourning, which is no obligation to do. So that's the basic explanation here. So, again, I don't know. It could be nowadays. One might argue we're all delicate. Certainly, we have a much more. We bathe much more frequently than they did back in those times. That in Roman times, people did not take bathes once a week or once a night. Certainly, probably not even once a week. Probably not even once a month. Like I don't know how often they did it, but certainly different than what's practiced in modern civilization. So we are more sensitive than they were back then. So I don't know how that plays into the actual law regarding bathing. But we see here that there is an exception to the bathing rule for someone who is sensitive. And that's, actually, that's not just an isolated incident of Gamliel. If you have other people who are very sensitive, they would presumably fall into this category also, and might be able to act similar to him in taking baths. It's interesting to point out, just like a little interesting idea here, that we see in the first Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel was stringent. He said, even though I don't have to say the Shema, I'll say it anyways. Over here, he was being lenient on himself. He was saying, most mourners are not supposed to take a bath, but I will take a bath because I feel I need it. So we see, he wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, be stringent. I have to do everything more than the law. That's not what it was about. Gamliel was saying that, I look at the reason for the things. I look at the reason why we do what we do, and I determined. And again, this usually needs a rabbi or a halachic authority to determine. It's not always a good idea to go and just like jump to these conclusions ourselves without a better knowledge of the laws. But I determined that the reasons don't apply to me. I don't mean to you can't just do that. You can't just be like, oh, this mitzvah doesn't apply to me. But these are not like there's no mitzvah here. I mean, Shema is a mitzvah, but there's a system of understanding when you're obligated, when you're not obligated, and he understood that in his situation he was obligated, even though other people in that situation might not be obligated. So I don't mean to come across like you could start playing with mitzvahs like, oh, this doesn't apply to me, this doesn't apply nowadays. But the idea being that when we understand the Hebrew word is the gedarim, English word, how would you translate that? The boundaries. That's probably a little definition of gedarim. The boundaries of when it applies, when it doesn't apply. One who understands those, which would be more likely to be like a rabbi or a halachic authority, has the ability to understand when they don't apply, which is one of the, that's one of, like when we talk about like our great Torah leaders, that's a lot, or our great halachic leaders, like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein we had in the U.S. in the 20th century. That's a lot of what it is. It's this ability to understand the laws and when they apply and when they don't apply. It's not like anyone could read the book, but the greatness when we talk about Moshe Feinstein, his greatness. I'm not like coming to define his greatness, but one of the things about him, why we turn to him, we don't just like decide things now, like let me figure it out, is because he had that ability to see deeper, to understand things better, to understand the nuances. It applies here, doesn't apply here. This is a reason for an exception. This is a valid reason, this is not a valid reason. Is this idea to understand when things apply, when they don't, and that was Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel, one of the foremost scholars of his age, or maybe the foremost, certainly a great man. He was able to understand, I don't know, this doesn't apply to me, and he was able to understand it, to go lenient, as in the case of the Shema, and to go strict, to go lenient, as is the case in the with the bathing, and to go strict. In the case of the Shema, he was strict. He said the Shema even when he wasn't obligated. And let's finish up. We're going to finish up this round of stories about Rabbi Gamliel, right? The Mishnah, this is very classic, by the way, the style of the Mishnah, even though this Mishnah, and we'll see the next one, are not related to the topic at hand about Shema and the brachos and stuff. But since it sort of follows a flow, that we brought down one story where Gamliel acted and his Talmidim, his students asked him why he did that, and he explained it. So we bring down a few other incidents that match that pattern. And that's common in the Mishnah. You'll find that pattern of things where the Mishnah will go on tangents a little bit like that, and teach us other laws. So let's finish this last Mishnah, third story through Gamliel. Excuse me. This is Mishnah 7. So we're almost done with this chapter. Second to last Mishnah in the second chapter. So this will be a record for us, I think, hopefully, finishing 3 Mishnahs in one day. We're picking up steam. Ukeshameis Tavi Avdo. Tavi is somebody's name. When Tavi, the slave, servant, maybe a better word, of Rabbi Gamliel, passed away, Kibel Olav Tanchumen. He accepted condolences for his death. This is a custom, we still do it today, that after the deceased passes away, after the deceased is buried, the mourners will like sort of walk through a line of people with people on either side giving them condolences as they walk through. So Rabbi Gamliel did that after his servant passed away. They buried him and then he walked through this line. So his student said to him, and I bet you can guess what they asked based on the last Mishnahs. Did our master, did you not teach us that we don't do condolences for non-Jewish servants who pass away? They're not related to us. We may have a relationship, but we may feel close to them, and we may be sad over their passing, but generally this is a thing reserved for either tremendous scholars or who are sort of like leaders of the people, or we do it maybe for family members. We don't generally go around and do it for our servants, even if we did feel close to them. So, and that's the law. So why did you do it? They asked him. He said to them, Ein Tavi Avdi Kishar Kalavadim. Tavi my slave is not like other ones. Kasher haya, he was virtuous, which most commentaries understand to mean not just he was virtuous, like he was a good person, but even a level above that. Um, he was such a great person. His personality was, his character traits were so great that even without being part of the family, he was he was able to be that type of person that everyone should mourn for such a person who passes away. Despite his status of being not Jewish, he was a non-Jewish slave, which is a certain status. It's not Jewish fully, that's for sure. Despite that, he is able to, become a great person, and to the extent that we are going to mourn for him as we would one of our own family. And that is why Rabbi Gamliel accepted condolences for him, even though generally one does not accept condolence when they're non-Jewish slave passes away because they're not a family member. So that's this third Mishnah, and again, where Rabbi Gamliel knew and had a deep understanding of the law, and he was able to explain to his students why this particular case was different than other cases where we might act a little differently than we would for other people. So that's that Mishnah. God willing, we'll go on to the last Mishnah in this chapter, and maybe hopefully start chapter 3 in our next class. So thank you all for joining on YouTube, if there's anybody there. And hopefully we'll look forward to getting together again. Maybe next week. I have to figure out my summer schedule. I haven't worked it out yet, but we look forward to seeing you all again. Have a wonderful week and a good, happy Memorial. Well, I don't know, happy is the word, but